name is Mary Ann, and I am the Community Engagement Director here at North Star Reach, which basically means I work on stuff within the community for our camp and then stuff for our camper families. And I'm going to take you back because there's so many new faces this year that were not here last year. So that's exciting to me. I also want to thank you for being here during the work week. You know, we started this last year in the middle of the pandemic, and so many people were home from work. And for some reason, it didn't register in my brain that maybe a weekday wasn't the best time to have the conference because people are back to work in person. So those of you that are here, thank you. We are recording all of these sessions today, and they all will be up on our website. It kind of takes like a month to get them all up, but I know a lot of people let me know that they reference those. So just so you know, if your friends aren't able to be with us today, we definitely record everything. So my journey to this spot came in a way that probably most of your journeys to this spot did. 11 years ago, my daughter, Faith, started her journey as a sick kid. And she was admitted into Mott Children's Hospital with a lot of issues. She was chronically dehydrated. She couldn't go to the bathroom. She couldn't gain weight. We couldn't keep her stable. Like, there was a bunch of issues. She spent 260 days in the hospital that year. And we still were not done. They gave her a colostomy bag, a feeding tube, a central line. And, you know, I honestly, if I was trying to take notes last night to think about what I wanted to say, and I couldn't even come up with what happened that year. I couldn't even remember it all. By the time the first 2 years of her illness were over, she had had 36 admissions into the hospital. And, you know, it took about 4 years to get her stable. She was diagnosed with an extremely rare disease. There's only 4 other cases in the United States. There is no cure, but there's treatment. And so we will spend her life making sure she gets the treatments she needs to stay as healthy as we can make her, which isn't regular kid healthy, it's sick kid healthy. So, and the thing is when I was thinking about where some of you are, because you're in the beginning of your journey with your sick kids, I remember one day I was at the mall at Briarwood and I was in Von Mauer, and my ex-husband was with our daughter, and he's like, just go somewhere, go get out of the hospital, go somewhere. And I was like, where am I going to go? Like, seriously, where do I go? I don't even know where to go. I didn't have time to go home to see my son. So I drove to the mall and I walked into Von Mauer and I just started walking around, and there was a guy playing the piano. It must have been holiday time because I feel like there was music that was Christmassy, and I was walking around and a security guard came up to me and said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just walking around." And he said, "Well, they said you've been walking in a circle for the last hour and a half." And I didn't even realize that I had been walking in a circle. Like, honestly, like if I think back to that day, I think they had to have been lying to me. I was not. But what I learned was I was having PTSD, and what I was doing, I was processing the fact that Faith had been septic and we didn't know if she was going to make it. And we were out of the woods, like she was going to make it. And I was just walking in a circle, apparently. And I remember thinking how terrifying that was to me, because I have always been a very emotionally stable person. I deal with problems head on. I don't hide from things. I process things. And I realized then how much the experience of having a sick kid changed me. And kind of at that point, I realized I needed to find someone to help me. So I asked Faith's doctors, who were the best doctors at Michigan. And I said, well, we don't really have, I mean, we can have you talk to a social worker. So a social worker came in and they said, oh, do you need a parking pass? We can give you meal tickets. And I remember thinking, you know what, if this is their solution, I'm in trouble because I am not going to get anything I need from this. So I reached out to another mom that I had seen on Facebook. Her name was Kathy. She's going to talk to you a little later today. And she had a sick kid that was very complex too. And I said to her, where do we go? Like, what do we do? Because her son was a little older than Faith. And she said, well, there's nowhere to go and there's nothing to do. So like I decided when Faith was, she's 15 now, she was probably 4, 5, 6, 7, that it would be my gift to getting her through all of this, to make sure that families have a place to go and that there is somewhere to go and there's places to talk. And, honestly, I thought she would be like out of the house before I was able to do this because her care is not easy and it's stressful. And I didn't think I'd ever be able to pull it together. And then in 2020, right before the pandemic, let me scoot back for a second. In 2017, Faith came to camp at North Shore Reach. And that's when I realized maybe I could start to do something while she was still in the house. When I dropped her off at camp, I thought there's no way. She had never been away from me for longer than a 3-hour period. And that's when I would leave the hospital. But I wouldn't leave her at home for very long because nobody knew how to take care of her. Nobody knew how to deal with her crisis situations. So she went to camp and I was certain I would get a call to say, come pick her up. She lasted the whole week. And when I picked her up, she cried and I was like, oh, she hated it. Thank God. Because I was sick the whole time she was gone, literally sick. My husband and I joke about it all the time. We were both sick. And I said to her, you hated it. You don't have to ever come back. And she said, I don't want to leave. I was like, what? So the thing is what that did for me, it gave me permission to have a life outside of caring for Faith. And that has changed my whole outlook on life. It has changed me to be able to realize that there's a lot of moms out there, a lot of dads who take care of their sick kids who need to understand that their lives are important too, that if we're not well, we can't take care of our sick kids. So in 2018, Faith went back to camp, even though I didn't want her to. Like I tried to convince her not to go because I still didn't think I could handle it. But that year was her best year there. She met her cabin was filled with these girls from Chicago, and one of them was a ballerina. And the one that was a ballerina had a lot of difficult life situations, and she was still a ballerina. And Faith came home from camp that year and she said, I want to be a ballerina. And I was like, you can't be a ballerina. You've got she's got a colostomy bag and 2 different feeding tubes. And how is she going to be a ballerina? We can't keep her healthy. She's like, I want to be a ballerina. Well, I can tell you, becoming a ballerina is what has made Faith want to stay healthy. She, from that point on, has worked so hard just so she can still dance. And she now is dancing with the Joffrey Ballet in Chicago. So, we drive back and forth. So it's amazing. So once she became a ballerina, I decided that I was going to go to this camp and let them know that I was going to another nonprofit to help these families. And the CEO at the time said, you know what, do it here. Our families here, they need you. And I think that you should do it here. And I said, great. And 3 months later, the pandemic hit, like out of the blue. And we realized then that our families need us now more than ever. And, I know that those of you that have sick kids, or those of you that are here, that work in the hospital system, I shout out for being here because this is so important. The pandemic is hardest on our families. The isolation is like deafening. I haven't seen my best friend in 2 years because I only see people I have to see, because I don't want to put Faith at risk for getting something that she might not make it through. So we have really focused on building our serious support series to make sure our families are feeling supported. And I think this conference, which is one of a kind, is the best way to do that. And we do have family support groups and camper support groups. We call them camper meetups, because when you say support groups, kids are like, man, I don't want to go to a support group. But the meetups are fun. My daughter Faith loves hers. They have a blast. I hear her laughing in her room and I'm thinking, oh, she's in her support group. So it's amazing. So that's how I got here. And this is how this kind of all came to be. And what I can tell you is I worked really hard to build programming that I think you can take pieces of, because it's really easy for me to say to you, oh, you've got to take care of yourself, or you can't just focus on your sick kid. But I was you, I am you. I mean, even today, I think of all the things I need to be doing that I'm not doing for self-care. But I think that there'll be things you can take away and stories that you're going to hear over the next couple of days that will let you walk away and think, okay, if Kathy Prout is doing that, I can do that too. Or, you know, that's a good idea. I can handle that. So it isn't like we're saying to you, come on in, change your whole life, take care of yourself, because the reality is I understand that your child's health often has to be first in your mind. And as much as you want to totally get into self-care, it's not always possible, but being here is showing up for yourself. And that's huge. And being, you know, signing up for a group or just reaching out to another parent that you meet in the next couple of days will make a big, huge difference. Today, in the beginning, you're going to hear some more stories of parents and self-care. You know, we all have 100 stories we could tell. I thought about how I wanted to start today, and I think that wandering in the department store is one of my most embarrassing stories that I've never even told my husband, because it scared me. And I thought, he'll tell my mom and she'll make me go see a psychiatrist. And, you know, like, I think we all have tons of stories, but to start off today, we have 3 stories from moms who have been doing this for a bit, and they have realized in different ways why self-care is so important. And they're going to talk to you. And we have Manisha, who's one of our amazing facilitators for our care or support groups, who is going to talk to you a little bit about what that looks like and what self-care is. And then we've got breakout sessions, and those breakout sessions, you can kind of pick and choose. You'll come in the room and you'll let us know where you want to go. And my son and I are presenting one for siblings, because tell you what, having a sick kid is one thing, but it affects the whole family. My son started passing out, and we couldn't figure out what was going on with that. And then we realized he was having severe PTSD from my daughter's illness. So it affects the whole family, and that's why it's so important for us to be here. So there's lots of great breakout sessions. And then finally, we're going to end with our panel, which our director of camping is going to facilitate. And we've got 2 physicians. One is a hospital system physician, one is a family practice physician, and someone from a foundation, all with ideas on the best way for you to advocate for healthcare for your child. It's super tricky right now. I know that one of my moms called and she's like, I've got a kid who's sick, who has a fever, but we're not allowed to go to the pediatrician, and I'm terrified to take him to the ER. What do I do? You know, it's that kind of like, how do you advocate, especially in the middle of a pandemic, for your sick kids? So big lineup today. If you have questions, the easiest thing to do is put it in the chat. Some of the groups will ask you to participate, and please feel free to and turn on your camera. So I think we're ready to It's hard for me to keep track of time. We actually have a minute or two before we start. Does anyone have any questions for us today? Or Amy, Amy, have I forgotten anything? I just want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything.
I don't think so. Everyone did a great job. Welcome, everyone. It's so wonderful to see. I've gotten to know many of you both through our programs and through registration and helping you. So really wonderful to see you all. And when we do the breakouts, we'll make it clear what the breakout sessions are. People can decide, at a moment's notice where they want to go, and we'll make sure you get into the right room. And yeah, I think that might be it.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna change my gallery view. Oh, I don't know if I can do this. See? All right, Kathy, you're there. And Charlotte. Hi, Charlotte, Kathy. And I know I saw Bridget. There we are. Okay, we got everybody. I was making sure we have all of our first facilitators. Amy, would you mind doing Manisha's introduction for me, and then we'll get her rolling.
Absolutely. Let me spotlight the group that's speaking and see if I can get everyone. There's Manisha. Let's see, we've got Bridget. And we've got Kathy. And we have Charlotte.
Now, I was going to introduce Kathy. I don't have Charlotte up on my screen yet. I was going to introduce Kathy. Manisha, do you want me to do that now, or do you want to start and then I will introduce Kathy?
You can introduce the panel members now. I think that's
okay. Perfect. So I'm going to start with Kathy. She is going to be our first parent storyteller today. She's going to tell you a little bit about her journey and how she ended up deciding she needed to do self-care. Kathy is the mom that I reached out to when I knew no one at the hospital and thought, she's a pro. She's got this. She is navigating this system. Her kid had already had, I don't know, I think she was at 50 surgeries when Faith was at 15. So I was like, this is my girl. She's going to get it. I reached out to her. I was a total stranger. Right away, she was as sweet as can be to me. And I can't tell you how often 3 o'clock in the morning, we're like sobbing to each other because we only talk for years, we only talk to each other. That's so she's the mom of the amazing Larry, who many of you probably have seen because he's kind of a big deal. He's kind of a viral sensation. But she is going to start today and she's going to tell you a little bit about an experience she had that made her kind of shift her lifestyle.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Kathy and everything Marianne said is right there. I remember the first time I saw you, Marianne, up at the hospital with Faith, and Faith is gorgeous. And she was this little gorgeous girl. And I remember her walking like to the playroom, and Marianne, whenever she would be with Faith, looking at Faith, Marianne, your face would always glow. Like you would look at your daughter like you just love her so much. And it was so obvious to me. And I remember that. When you weren't with Faith, yes, you looked more stressed and sad, but when you were with her, you gave it all to her. So good job, Marianne. But anyway, Larry, and when I was 35, I became pregnant with Larry. He is the youngest of our 6 children. We wanted to have another baby. We had our first 4 children in 5 years. And then we had our Molly, and we thought we were done, but we thought we'll have another one. We'll have Larry. Didn't know it was him. At my 20-week ultrasound, they learned that Larry had many things going on. They thought what he had was trisomy 18. I think, if I remember right, that's what it was called, like a chromosome that wasn't right, because he had all the symptoms of that. He had a massive hole in his stomach, no skin whatsoever from his rib cage to his sides to his rectum, no skin at all. So all the organs are outside. Spina bifida, 2 club feet, bladder extrophy. So his bladder was in 2 pieces, 1 on each side of his body. He is a boy, but his parts were split in half, 1 on each side of his body. He had a big gap. He could bring his feet to his ears. Larry was our Humpty Dumpty that they started putting back together. He nearly died while I was pregnant. He nearly died when I gave birth. We did a C-section. He almost didn't make it the first 2 weeks, and that would just happen over and over, as I know a lot of you have experienced, where you would pull the family together and say goodbye, and then he'd make it, and then goodbye, and then he'd make it. And it was our goal just to hit 5 years, and then it was a goal to hit 10 years, and then it was a goal to hit 15 years. Now Larry is 20. During those times, I remember there was nothing. There was nothing. There was, like Marianne said, lunch tickets, maybe. Sometimes this massage person would come, and I didn't want anyone to touch me. So I'm like, I'm not doing that. I don't know if it's PTSD, but during a lot of those troubled times in the beginning, I just didn't want to be touched. And I was all focused on Larry. And I remember driving to the grocery store and just screaming in the car at the top of my lungs. I remember being in different grocery stores and things would set me off. If I would wear sunglasses and have my hat up. I didn't want to talk to anyone. If someone spoke to me, I would cry. I always cry in Myers. Don't know why to this day, but like a song or music or something, or I'd see something that would trigger. A lot of triggers, I think, when you have a child that you're always, there's like an anvil over your head and you're just waiting, is he going to make it through the night? Even to this day, I go in the morning, and my husband and I both worry that there could be that day where it's a struggle for Larry. It takes a lot to be Larry. He burns calories. He's had over 100 surgeries now. And these are straight up surgeries, 109 surgeries. And most of them, all of them were because he needed them, not because of any kind of elective thing. There was nothing out there for us though to get help. When Larry was about 5, we had to go to Johns Hopkins for some of his surgeries. And that's when my husband, who has ulcerative colitis, got real sick and almost died. He had to have his whole colon removed, his gallbladder removed. He was septic. He had blood clots in his liver, his lungs. We nearly lost him. And then in 2009, he developed a liver disease because of ulcerative colitis. In 2014, he got sick again. And then this summer, his liver disease has progressed, and all of it is related to ulcerative colitis. So things were hard, but somehow we would just keep going because we had to. And it always seemed like we would do better when things were, I think I do better when things are in crisis mode. I have more energy, I'm more focused, I'm more organized. And then when things get better in our family is when I have a meltdown and crash and freeze up and become depressed. And during COVID, I think some people who have a medical person in their family, COVID for us was nothing new in a way. We've always had antibacterial on the counter. We've always been hyper careful during the flu season. This is going to sound sick, but was kind of like, this is cool, because if I go on Facebook and see friends of mine having wonderful lives and taking trips and going out with their friends, I hardly do that when it's not COVID. And I felt sort of like, oh, now everyone's home like me. And it didn't make me, I wasn't trying to be mean for them, but I just felt better. Like, nobody has a life now. We're all at home, And so at first I was like really into COVID. And then I started having health issues. I started having problems where I couldn't hang on to things. I was dropping things, falling down, wobbly memory. And I started having lightning bolts go down both arms. So they took me in the doctors and did an emergency MRI. And they said my spinal cord was being compressed to the point where it was almost cut by my bone, by my discs. And that if it happened, I would become paralyzed or die. So they scheduled a quick surgery, and I had to have a spinal cord fusion. The day that they were doing all those tests, it was the beginning of COVID in 2020. So I had my mask on. I was scared to go to the doctors. We'd been so careful about not getting sick for Larry Jr. and Larry Sr. I knew I had to have surgery. I'm like, how am I going to have surgery? I know I'm going to get, it was before people knew everything. And I thought, I'm going to catch COVID at the hospital. I'm going to give it to my family. We're all going to die. I mean, all these crazy ideas were going through my head. that night, when I was calming down and adjusting to what was going to happen, I started throwing up first, had diarrhea, sweating, and then I started having pain from my face down, waves of pain coming in my chest, and then it hit me. I'm having a heart attack. Little Larry hung on to me. My husband was running up and down the stairs calling my son John to come take care of Larry because we couldn't, COVID, we're trying to, how are we going to do this? So we got everything situated and he took me up to the hospital in Howell. He couldn't come in. They wouldn't let him come in. I could barely, at that point, I could hardly, my arms, nothing worked. The pain was intense. I thought, I knew I'm dying. I am dying. This is how it's going to end. They took my clothes off me. They kept asking me questions I could barely answer. My heart was racing on the monitor. My blood pressure was skyrocketed. And then they hooked me up to everything and they went, hands off. They said her heart's good. Her heart, it's not a heart attack. But I had all the symptoms. They even had the crash paddles on the side. I mean, it was, and I to this day, it's hard for me to believe I didn't have a heart attack because I thought I was having a heart attack. And after about 8 hours, they sent me home. It continued for a week. I went back into the ER, and that's when they introduced Xanax to me, which I get a small prescription. And when I feel a panic attack coming on now, I can take one. And it's been a lifesaver. But the big thing is I had to switch up my life. And I knew that it happened because I thought without me, they're all going to die. I have to be okay. I have to be healthy. Who's going to take care of everyone? And then I realized I don't even take care of me. And because of COVID, North Star Reach started having the Zoom get-togethers where we would have these little sessions and talk to everyone. And every time you get on, you get to reintroduce yourself, which is very therapeutic. And you get to reintroduce your life story, which helps. It's private, it's confidential. We laugh, we talk, we cry. There was one, my husband got sick again this summer, as I said, and there was one where I couldn't even talk. I just was like, I don't want to talk, but it was nice to be there and see everyone. I finally realized that I've always wanted to be a mom. That's all I wanted to be. But before I was a mom, there was a me, and I forgot about me. And I started crocheting again, and we've got this little pool in the backyard that I sit in, and I started reading again, and I still can get my things done. I'm still taking care of my husband and little Larry, and our older kids are out of the house. But I finally realized I was putting myself on hold, and Larry's 20 years now, for years. And that's not okay. But I didn't know how to do it. And I really feel like COVID helped me because I finally started to see all that. So that's my story.
You did it. Thanks, Kathy.
Welcome. I hope I did it. I got
You
notes.
did it. Yeah. Manisha, do you want to?
Yeah, you did an awesome job, Kathy. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Could I just introduce Manisha? Is that all right? And
sure, go ahead.
Kathy, thank you. I mean, really, you give so much to our community, and
thanks.
Yeah. So just by way of introduction, our support groups that we're offering, as was said, started last year. And what this session is a little bit like a glimpse into a support group. And I was lucky enough to be paired with Becky, our medical director, Becky Patrius. And we knew that we needed or wanted to have a trained social worker. Obviously, Becky's, a family practice physician. And she said, I have a rock star. I've got someone I've met through, and I think Manisha actually worked a little bit in Dr. Becky's practice. And Manisha joined our group. And I'm delighted that many of our actually, I think our support group is all here tonight. So we've got Charlotte, we have Kristen, we've got Cece, Manisha, of course, and Siobhan will be joining us later. But one of the things Manisha has done is, as I am someone, I don't have my own children, I've certainly through family caregiving faced a lot of challenges for my elderly parents, and kind of the stories what I've realized is there are just so many challenges, both what Kathy just shared, physical, emotional, and we're all trying to support each other each week. And Manisha just has a way of holding a space for the range of emotions, and there's quite a range of holding the space for us. And this is myself as well, Manisha. You've been a tremendous support to me, and also offering very practical kind of coping strategies. And every week there's something different, like that she's taught our group, whether it's a jar of gratitude, whether it's yes and she's got a firmness that I love. There's a phrase that I've heard in meditation that's called to have a strong back, but a soft front, where you keep your heart expansive and soft, but yet you're strong. And so with that, I will turn it over to Manisha. We're just so delighted to have you here, and everybody else. Again, a glimpse into kind of the support that we are hoping to offer, are offering and continue to do so, but really rely on some expertise from help from people like Manisha. So thank you, Manisha.
Well, thank you, Amy. I appreciate that. And I'm so glad that you did that, so I don't have to even talk about myself. So that's great. I can just go right into talking about self-care and how we manage or attempt to manage a little bit of this every single day. It's so hard to do. And just as Amy stated, our small support group, I started with them last year, and it was a space of where we all are able to come in and talk about where we're struggling, where we're succeeding, the things that we're working on, some things that we need to do better. And honestly, the group has helped me just as much, as I have given things to them as well. So self-care has been the ongoing goal that we're forever reaching for, that everyone rationally knows it makes sense. Everyone always says, yeah, I know rationally I should be taking care of myself, but it's so hard to practice. So in our group, we try to take little steps of every kind of day stories or what's been going on in our week or past couple of weeks. And then we try to find spaces where we could insert real life self-care in those spaces. So Kathy, you did an amazing job with your story. And I absolutely love the fact that you found that you are there, right? You have to be the best version of you to be able to help your family. Go ahead.
Thank you. That's very nice of you.
No.
One thing I forgot to say that I wish I could say is volunteering. Larry Jr. and I volunteer. For years we've volunteered, and we're part of a lot of nonprofits, and I'm on the board of a nonprofit. And that helped keep us going. So it was either volunteering, which always gives you something that makes you feel good, or the life we led, which was medical. And then that was a contributing factor when COVID hit. Volunteering was taken away from us. And I really believe that volunteering helps. If any of you have the time, being a Hope ambassador at the hospital, we volunteered and helped people get their vaccines. It's just a little tidbit I wanted to throw in, but thank you. That's very sweet. Thank you to all of you at North Star Reach, because I might be dead. So.
Absolutely. And I think one of the key things that you said in your talk was that not only finding you, but then also making sure that you are healthy so that you can be here to take care of your family, so that you can be the best version of yourself. That is going to be the key takeaway from today's session. So I'm not going to fill up the time talking. I'm going to hand it over to the next two presenters, and we're going to tap in and pull out the key self-care nuggets for this session to make sure that we can share with everyone else. Please, if you have questions at any time, don't hesitate to unmute yourself and ask. We are super open and fluid in this session. Okay, so Charlotte or Bridget, who should we hand off to next? Charlotte, you want to go?
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm so thankful to have this opportunity. I do miss seeing you all. It's funny because my girls were very upset about North Star Reach not being able to meet in person yet. That's just how important you all are to us. So much that Kathy said really does resonate, right? And one of the things I was thinking when I was reading people comment is that I don't think how abnormal our life is when we're in the midst of this because we're all around each other, right? Like if I was at the hospital and I was talking to Kathy, so much of how she was feeling, you're like, yeah, I'm feeling the same way. So I would say for myself, I began to think I was doing good because when I talk to the other moms or even dads at the hospital, I'm like, I'm doing good. And one of the things that my Nisha really just broke apart for me is my main coping skill was I would laugh. So as long as I could laugh, I thought I was really doing good. And she just tore that apart because that's just how sweet Manisha is to all of us in our group. But the self-care came at such a point in my life. For those of you who don't know, I have 2 children diagnosed with sickle cell. And I think a part of me, because at first it was my son that was very symptomatic. I thought if I can get through him, then I'm okay. When in the midst of when my son started getting better, then my daughter started having more admissions. So between the 2 of them, at least half a year or more, we were literally living at Mott, an hour away from our home. I'm so glad, Marion, to hear that you're having a session for siblings, because finally, my daughter, I can leave the house now and she won't cling to me. I have another child, my oldest daughter, and she would cling and she would just have these meltdowns. And so if you would have asked me at the time, I felt like I was doing really good. Now, I knew I wasn't taking the best care of myself, but there was 3 things I would always say. I would say I would never have unforgiveness in my heart. I would never go crazy and I wouldn't die. And 2 of those 3 things almost happened, which was like a wake up call for me. And I can remember the day so well. My daughter was in ICU. I think Blake may have been on the 7th floor. And I can remember palliative came to talk to me and I had nothing. Like literally I had nothing. I got up, I got dressed, everything that day. And I remember they even said to me like, well, Charlotte, what do you think? And blah, blah, blah. And I literally told them I have nothing for you. And I literally inside, I was just totally tapped out. And we was having our meetings then. And I can remember that's the one thing I would do is I would make sure no matter if I was in the hospital or not, that I would attend the biweekly meetings. And I would get off the meetings and I would be very mad at Manisha. I was like, how dare you come up into my house like this? I'm trying to hold this together and you're just coming in, you're blowing my house down, right? But it made me face where I was. And it also gave me a safe place then to come where I could just cry or I could just vent. I remember there's one session where I found a little space in ICU to have the meeting. And I literally just sat there and cried throughout the whole meeting. And there was people there that could empathize with me and have compassion, but then challenge me to say, now, what are you going to do to get beyond this? I'm thankful to say that today that I have made some progressive steps. I think I have a story which really shows it. As I stated, I have 2 children diagnosed with sickle cell, and my son 2 weeks ago, we had to take him to the emergency, and we knew we was preparing for me to come back to work. And so I politely took him to the ED and I dropped him off and kept right on going. And he was like, and then I would call. And for those of you who would know my son, yes, this is very funny. And I was like, so how's things going? And do you want something to eat? He's like, yeah, I kind of will take some Chipotle. I'm like, okay. I said, well, I'll see you in an hour. And he's like, what? An hour? Well, what are you doing? Oh, did you forget, son? I have some errands I have to run. And since this was not on my schedule today, and I know Ann Arbor very well now because we was down here so much, I'll see you another hour or so. And that's what I did. So that was Friday. That Friday, he did not get admitted. Unfortunately, he did not improve. And so I had to take him back this past Tuesday. Well, no, I'm sorry. I had to take him back. Yes, last Tuesday. So I had not started work yet. So we knew I was going to start work this week. So now mom's on a totally different schedule now. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take you down there, but this is how this is going to look. I will spend one night with you. I am coming back to Lansing, which I did. I did not go back down to Ann Arbor to this past Saturday, and things was pretty rocky when I got there. And I was talking to the team members and things. I do remember when I took them back Tuesday, it was so interesting because that day I had dropped them off. And again, I was running errands and they were trying to reach me. And I remember my son was like, Mom, we've been trying to reach you. I'm like, well, you know, I'm in Myers, and so my Wi-Fi don't quite work right. And they had questions for me, but I remember whereas before, I always had to make sure I thought I needed to know all of his records. I even said to them, I said, listen, if you was to search his records, I'm sure this information you're asking me is documented. So you're able to find this. And so I've just taken a totally different approach. So I did go down this past Saturday. I did spend the night with him. I came back Sunday and I haven't been back. I mean, we'll FaceTime each other now. And I told Manisha I was going to text our group and put on there, this is an example. This is the perfect picture of self-care. Mom drops 21-year-old off at the ED and keeps on going. Yay! You know, it was just something. And that is something in the earlier days I would never have done. I never would have taken him. I mean, when he was 11 and 12 and 13, even when he was 16, I would still stay there all the time. If I was doing something in Lansing, I would run to Lansing and come right back. And looking back on that, I shouldn't have done that, right? I just thought at the time I had to. And one of the things that Manisha did teach us early on was, who said you had to? And that's the one thing I think to myself now, like, who says I have to do such and such? Who says I have to be dressed when the doctors come in? Who says I even have to talk to the doctors when they're around? Who says that if I have a 21-year-old child, I have to go to the ED with them? And so I've given myself now that freedom, and my mind is so much clearer now. Kathy, I can so relate when you're talking about dropping things. The joke in my family is they would ask me questions and I would just look at them. Like I couldn't even formulate an answer. And so now they ask me questions, I'm like, you know what? I have no answer for you right now. And I give myself that space. So I just thank you all for giving me this opportunity. I just say to all, we only get one of us, and that's it. And our families love us and people mean well, but I'm here to tell you, people will take everything you have and keep right on going. And so I hope that you all can just learn how to just take the time, take the freedom, just be free.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Charlotte, for telling that story. That is amazing. And for those who know Charlotte, this is a huge step for her to be able to drop off her son and be in that space. It's a huge step. Hi. It's a huge step for her, and we're so very proud of her, and Blake is doing great. And so some of the things that we do, as Charlotte was talking about, some of the things that we do speak on in our support group is being able to address some of these myths that we create with being our superhero caregivers, right? These myths that we say, absolutely, you're going to be the best mom and you're going to be the best caregiver that you can possibly be, but does that have to look the way that you have manifested in your mind, right? And so sometimes we take some tough times to challenge ourselves on redefining how that picture looks and reteaching people how to teach us when we need to have space to take care of ourselves. So that's just a little part. Thank you so much, Charlotte. Bridget, you are up. Thank you so much for waiting and being patient. We're so excited to hear your story.
Sorry, I have to unmute myself. Tim wanted to say hi to, that was my husband who popped his head in there. To say hello to everybody. So it was about 4 years ago, and I was working at a bakery, a local bakery. I needed a part-time job just to have something for myself. And my boss put down this giant bowl of this ooey gooey chocolate cake mixed with buttercream, and I had to start rolling cake pops for the day. And the second that bowl hit the marble counter, I got dizzy, and I grabbed the counter and the world started to spin. And I thought to myself, I should drink an orange juice. So I stumbled over to the cooler and I opened an orange juice. I wasn't even thinking. My boss was like, what are you doing? You didn't pay for that. So I chugged this orange juice, hoping that it was just my blood sugar. About 10 minutes later, it happened again. 10 minutes later, it happened again. And I was sitting on the floor. I called my husband and I said, I think I need to come home. So I told my boss I had to leave for the day. It's like, maybe it's just my hormones, perimenopause, low blood sugar. Maybe I didn't eat enough. Who knows? Then the next day, I was taking my dog to the dog park, and it happened 20 times that day, where I would feel lightheaded, dizzy, my heart was racing, and I drove to the ER. When I got to the ER, they did the full workup, everything checked out just fine. And they said, I think we need to fit you for with a heart monitor that you're gonna wear for a week, and then it's gonna send all the information to a cardiologist. They stuck this monitor on my chest. I went home, it recorded everything for a week. At that time, I was coaching basketball. This was now probably 6 years post liver transplant from my son, Jack. He had a liver transplant when he was 18 months old, very rare liver disease. We had my daughter about 3 weeks before his transplant, and my husband was the donor. And so there were a lot of rough years. We got 6 years post-transplant, and I was working at a bakery, coaching my daughter's basketball team. I was running the service club at the elementary school, working out. I was on the board of a nonprofit. I was literally filling every second of my life to avoid thinking about or dealing with everything that we had been through with my son's illness. I just wanted everything to be back to normal. Then the results came back on my heart monitor. My cardiologist called and he said, I need to see you right now. And I can't let you leave when you come see me. So I went to his office and he sat me down and he said, there is absolutely no reason you should be alive right now. Your heart rate was clocking in at about 350 beats per minute. And most people go into cardiac arrest at around 240. I started to cry. He said, I want you to be alive for your family and for Jack and for Grace and for Tim. And if I let you leave, that's not going to happen. I mean, I literally thought it was my blood sugar when all of this was happening. I was still walking at the park. I was still coaching basketball. What happened during basketball, I would sit down, my girls would come over, they would throw basketballs at my head just to make me feel better. And then I would get up and I would keep coaching. I remember thinking as I was sitting there, I just want everything to be normal. I just want everything to go back to what it was before. Now I was the patient and I had to be in the hospital and my son was sick, and how did we get here? How did I get here to be sitting in this chair? So I was admitted to the hospital and they started the full workup. I called Tim. I had him bring everything to the hospital that I usually bring for my son, Jack. We had the white noise machine and my weighted blanket and the lavender oils and my battery powered candle and a little golden retriever stuffed animal and this poster with a prayer that my mom always said to us that I hung on the wall, and a Notre Dame Play Like a Champion sign. I mean, like we have a little bin. I'm sure most of us do have a little bin that your go bag. So I had Tim bring that to the hospital, and they started doing the full workup. And on the first night I was there, I was laying in bed, and it was around Thanksgiving time, and it started to snow. It was the first snow, and it was really, really, really peaceful, but I was terrified. I started blaming myself. Did I not work hard enough in my spin class? Did I ridiculous, irrational things? Did I not drink enough green smoothies this week? Did I should I have had that glass of wine last night? Am I not doing enough yoga? Am I not breathing enough? Am I not praying enough? Like what I was blaming myself for what was happening to my body. And I thought I should be doing fine at this point. I laid there and thought to myself, I'm gonna die if something doesn't change. And the doctor confirmed that for me. He said that you need to start doing things for yourself, or you're just gonna die. You're gonna die waiting for that time when you should be doing something to care for yourself. I mean, I kept saying to myself, I'm gonna wait until Jack is better to follow some of the dreams that I had. Before my son got sick, I was a lobbyist for an early childhood organization and worked on legislation for children, early childhood mental health and family health. And I played instruments and I sang in choirs and I did triathlons and I had a whole life. And then when Jack got sick and I had Grace as a baby, I said, you know what, everything's going to be on hold and I'm going to take care of Jack. And I'm going to do those things when Jack gets better. And if Jack's not going to get better, he had a transplant. We traded one chronic condition for another chronic condition. So it'll be a lifetime before Jack gets better. He's healthy, like I think Kathy, you said he's healthy in a sick kid sort of way. They did the full workup of my heart and everything was fine. My heart was perfectly fine. They said that the only reason I was still alive is because my heart was so healthy anatomically. Everything that was wrong with my heart was electrical. And they determined that I had a very rare form, here we are with rare conditions again, very rare form of ventricular tachycardia. Was polymorphic, idiopathic polymorphic ventricular tachycardia, which means they don't know why it happens. It's super fast and super erratic heartbeat. It's literally what you see when you're an athlete falls dead on the basketball court and they say he had a heart attack. When your heart goes into arrhythmia and it won't stop. And they don't know why, and they don't know how to fix it. So they recommended that I have a defibrillator implanted. I was having none of that. I was not going to be a 41-year-old woman with a defibrillator implanted in the side of my chest. So I decided that I needed a second opinion. I happened to get hooked up with one of the world-renowned electrophysiologists at the University of Chicago, Dr. Marty Burke. He was my uncle's electrophysiologist. And I remember walking into his office, he looked at my chart and like my other cardiologists, he said, there's absolutely no reason that you should be alive right now. I don't think you need a defibrillator. I want to study you because we never, ever, ever get to study people like you and see why you never passed out, why you haven't died. So he said, I want to do a procedure where I go in and I map the electricity of your heart. So a 3-hour procedure took 6 hours. My husband couldn't, I came out of surgery. He was very nervous why it had taken so long. They were not giving him updates. And his biggest complaint was he couldn't watch a very important football game on TV. So that was reassuring because I was hoping that he was finding something to calm himself and trying to watch some football. So they fixed it. They found why my heart was misfiring and they did an ablation and they fixed it. And when I went to my follow-up appointment, I walked in and Dr. Burke was crying and the nurse was crying and they sat me down in the chair and they said, you need to understand, God wants you on this planet for a reason. Anything you've ever wanted to do, you need to get on it. There's no medical reason you should be alive, and God, this is a sign for you. they showed me the mapping of my heart, and I have seen a lot of scans and exams, and I have never seen anything quite like this. It was in my own body and not my son's body. So I quit my job at the bakery. I cut back on all my activities, and so I had a lot of extra time. One Friday morning, I should have been rolling those chocolate cake pops at the bakery, and I wasn't working there anymore. So instead, I took our golden retriever Corby to the dog park, and all the owners were bundled up. It was snowing outside, and they had these furry scarves over their face and talking, but you couldn't see their mouths moving. And then all of a sudden, this Airedale ran up to Corby and started humping him. And the owner and I started laughing and saying, "Oh, look, they're fast friends. You know, this is going to be great." And we just started chatting. And after about 30 minutes, she asked me, she said, "So how long have you been doing storytelling? And where have you trained? Have you always lived in Chicago?" And I was completely confused. I said, "I've never officially done storytelling or writing. I've always wanted to. This has been something I've always wanted to do." And the next thing that came out of my mouth was what I'm sure a lot of us have said out loud is, "But my son had a liver transplant, and so that has been what I've been doing." And I literally caught my breath the second it came out of my mouth. And I said to her, "Why do you ask?" And her name is Diane Castile. She said, "Because I'm a producer and a storyteller and have worked with The Moth on NPR, and I want you to tell stories." Everything changed in that moment. I became, as I started writing and doing storytelling, taking classes, I became calmer, I became happier. My kids were happier. My marriage was calmer and happier. Everything that I did to settle myself through writing and storytelling settled our entire family. Everything I realized that everything I had been doing, the bakery, the service, the exercise, all seemed like self-care and things for me, but deep down, it really wasn't something that I needed for myself. And my trauma therapist at the time really encouraged me to follow this ridiculous, what I thought was a ridiculous dream to do storytelling and writing. And as part for me, but also part of being very therapeutic and in the journey of going straight through the trauma we had experienced instead of finding a billion ways to avoid it. Because the only way to the other side is straight through it. And then COVID hit. So there were no shows. I wasn't performing on stage anymore. There were no classes right at the beginning. Everything was, this thing that I had loved was going to be going away, except for virtual opportunities. And I had this feeling of panic because this had given me so much life for myself. So for the past, for probably since the transplant, I'd been having these, and this was at the beginning of quarantine, I'd been having these nightmares where I would be searching in the nightmare, I'd be searching for Jack, Grace, and Tim. And they'd always be some sort of natural disaster, like a hurricane or a fire, a tsunami, a tornado. And I literally could never find them in time. And it was always about saving them. And I was the main character. I had this nightmare in March. At the end of the nightmare, I was pinned against the wall and this guy had a knife to my neck. And in this dream, I remember thinking, I'm gonna die and no one's coming to save me. And I was able to free a hand in my dream. And I swung and I punched this guy square in the face, just like, it was amazing. The second in that dream, the second my hand hit his face, I woke up with a start and I was laying under my weighted blanket and I looked up at the ceiling And I literally couldn't believe what had happened. The lights were on, and I started to hear Jack like sort of adjust himself next to me, and he was watching TV with Tim. And then I hear Jack say, "What the hell, mommy? You just punched me square in the face." Tim was laughing so hard, he could barely talk. Jack was crying and he was laughing, saying, "I can't wait to tell my friends about that. That was so awesome." I am laughing and crying. I'm both partly like, I punched in my dream, and then I actually punched my son in the face unknowingly. And I felt horrible about that. But at the same time, I was laughing and crying because deep down somewhere in my soul, in my body, I did not want to give up or compromise the thing that had been so life-giving for me, and storytelling and writing. I wasn't going to let that happen, and I wasn't going to let it slip away. Waiting again until everything would be okay wasn't going to be an option. And in that dream, I fought for myself and my needs. I literally fought for myself, accidentally then punching my son, but I fought for myself. And now 3 years after the dog humping in the park and my heart is amazing. It's wonderful. There's nothing, I see them occasionally, but I've done 20 plus shows virtually, in person, a ton of writing, going to be published in some books. This like dream that I had about what a thing I wanted to do with my life, I didn't put on hold. And my inner being knew I had to fight for myself. And our lives are never going to go back to what they were before our kids got sick, ever. Our life is never going to be like it was before, but my whole family is better now on the other side of this, because I fought for myself. And it's just going to make me a better mom, wife, and friend and person for the world. So that is my story about self-care.
Oh my God, Bridget, that was amazing. Like, I'm gonna need to talk.
Sorry, I went too long. I like shut the Zoom down when I'm telling, so I don't see anybody or myself, because I make ridiculous face. I'm like, it is distracting. So I hope that wasn't too long. I was trying to get my.
No, not at all. It was amazing. I'm gonna need you to narrate my life story. We're gonna have to figure this out. That was
Thanks so much for everyone for listening and connecting and like holding the story, because we don't have a lot of people we can tell these things to. Well, that when the response isn't, well, everything's great now, or he's not in the hospital now, so you should be positive and thankful, and so I really appreciate this time to be with y'all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that so much. Those stories are so amazing. So I'm going to ask the ladies one last question before we open it up for questions, but it's just some key takeaways. I really want you guys to remember that being the most authentic version and the most healthy version of yourself is the only way you're going to be able to be there for the ones that you love, right? So any way that looks, and you don't have to start that today and think it's going to be something that you finished in a couple of years. Like literally, I start self-care every single day, sometimes every hour. And when I'm dealing with my 16-year-old, every millisecond, I'm starting over because he challenges me. So I have to practice self-care in very different ways. So it is definitely a marathon and not a sprint. We want to make sure you keep that in mind. And then also, it's not a weakness to need it. It's actually a strength. It's a superpower. When you tap into how to make yourself feel better and actively take care of yourself, you become stronger than anyone you've ever seen before. You become a version of yourself that you've never knew that you could be. So we want to make sure that you can manifest the superhero that you have in your mind, that you have to be for everybody that you take care of as well. Last thing I will say is that you most often have a team of people around you who ask you every single day what they can do. And we're often like, I don't know, I'll take care of it myself. You're not going to do it right. I'm going to take it. And there is moments where people won't do it how you do it. I will give you that. However, there are spaces where you can definitely tap into your support network. So I would encourage everyone to do that. The next time someone asks you if they can do something, surprise them with a yes. Absolutely. You can actually go get those groceries, do that laundry, vacuum my floor, any of these things that help give you a moment of time for yourself. I want you to tap into that.
Hey, Manisha, can I say something related to that?
Yes, go ahead.
During one of the things I also did, I always wanted to do improv. And so I took some online improv classes at Second City with like one of their comedians. During COVID, it was all virtual. And one of the games we learned, anyone who's done improv, is it's yes and. So someone will say, say something and then you say yes and. So I've actually adopted that for when people offer help for us. They'll say, can I bring you some soup? And I'm like, just bring it. I'm like, yes. And can you please get me some Gatorade and etc. Yes. Mm-hmm. And so I would add that, not even just yes, doing yes and that then it becomes so much easier.
Yes. Our group has done yes and I use yes and as a therapeutic tool all the time.
Yeah. Good.
It's the best way to communicate, especially in frustration, a way of not to allow people to devalue what you're saying, but also being very stern with what you're saying, and allow people to say yes, to have the validation of saying, okay, you heard what I was saying. So again, if your husband is like, well, I just thought you were going to do it, and I just assumed that you do it every night because that's what you're going to do. And you can say, yes, I know that that's what happened. And I still need you to get this done tonight. I still need that done. I still need you to do this. We still need to have this happen. So it's a great tool to ask for help and to better communicate with your supports. So I love that, Bridget. You are awesome. Improv is amazing as well. I love a good improv class. So we'll wrap up with this question. Bridget, Kathy, and Charlotte, I want you guys to answer this question. Who are you without your children? Who are you just as Kathy, Charlotte, and Bridget?
One word answers or what?
As however you can describe yourself.
Oh, don't open that up to me because
yeah, give me who are you? Who are you outside of the kids and Tim?
Oh, I'm a goddess.
Oh, I love that. Absolutely love that.
One word.
One word. Perfect.
I used to be nobody. I mean, I will admit that. Like I said, when little Larry was healthy for little Larry and my husband was healthy for him and all the kids were in their place and at school, that's when I would be like, I'm nobody. I don't have anyone to take care of. But that has changed since my fake heart attack. And now I craft and I crochet and I love to volunteer, and I know I'm strong and I have a life to live. No matter what's going on, I still have a life to live. So who am I? I'm me again. I'm becoming me again, finally. So.
I love that.
Yeah, and I would have to say, when you first said, I thought, well, I'm a lover of God and of life, and I'm free.
Ooh, absolutely. I love that. And you're working again. Yay!
And I'm working again. I'm so free.
I absolutely love that. Yes, free. Yes, and I asked that question and I present that same question to everyone here today. I want you guys to think about self-care in a very selfish space. Think of who you are outside of the things that you do every single day, who you wanted to be as a little girl. When you tap into that genuine version of yourself, I'll tell you guys, when I was little, I remember seeing I think it was the Grammys for the first time, and they had some big dance production that happened. I couldn't have been no more than 6. And I was like, yep, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to dance like those people. fast forward to me now? Absolutely not. I'm not going to do that
That's
ever again. Absolutely not. I'm not going to dance like those people at all. But I remember how fun and free it was to literally look at something and say, yep, I'm going to do that. I'm going to be that. That's who I'm going to be. And so I challenge you guys to do that for yourselves. Who are you outside of the roles that you play every single day? Because there's someone there. So we will wrap this up and give time for questions because we want people to have time for lunch. Does anyone have any questions for us? Any questions for our panelists? Thank you guys all so much for joining.
Yeah, I want to thank the panelists today. So I just asked permission to share this. One of the participants that is here said, Marianne, I'm in total tears. These women may have just saved my life. So, you know, like, I know asking people to do this, like share these stories, this is like as raw as it gets. I told Manisha, it's kind of like we're putting these folks out. It's like one of our support groups in front of the whole group, and we're recording this, and this is going to be a resource. But I mean it when I say this is so helpful for our families to hear that you can be this super parent that takes care of these kids and still be yourself. And Manisha, I don't think before I started doing this work here at North Star Reach, I could have answered that question. Like, I don't think who I was. I mean, I don't think, like, I am a helper, and I'm so glad to be able to say that, because before all of this, I would have said, I'm Faith's doctor, I'm Faith's nurse, I'm Faith's mom, I'm Faith's teacher, I'm Will's mom. You know, like, I don't think I could have identified with anything besides that. So I love that. But Kathy and Charlotte and Bridget, thank you for having the courage to share these very, very personal stories. I can tell you from a participant right here, she feels like this is life-saving information, because it's so important, you know, especially for newly diagnosed families that haven't been down this very long road that we've been on. Manisha, I just adore you. Thank you for this today. I need you in my ear all the time, to be honest with you. More than I have you.
It's not the best thing.
Yeah. So thank you.